Hey guys, it's Oliver. Before we continue the story, I just wanted to say how grateful I am to have reached 500 subscribers on YouTube. I'm just chugging along in this tiny operation, and it means so much to me that so many people want to join me. Let your friends know and give these episodes a like so more people can catch on and we can keep building this little community. The story is now being released on YouTube as well as Spotify as a podcast, so it's even easier to listen. Please know that just your listening ear is a gift to me and a dream come true. Anyway, back to the regular intro. The Cinders of Dezu, written and read by Oliver Tonic. A tyrant king, a missing girl, and a journey through a perilous world. Join me for this completed sci-fi fantasy novel read as an audio series. Enjoy the story from here on, or binge from the beginning with the first episode. Like and subscribe if you enjoy. My audiobooks are totally free. If you'd like to donate to support my writing, though, check out my Patreon in the description. And now, back to the tale. Chapter 7. Firas. Fingers gingerly held the handle of the small paintbrush as he finished the deep black of the creature's eye. He was happy with the result, but it was the color of the body that he was most concerned with. He had searched high and low for the color ingredients. When he had seen the way the sunlight shimmered across the fox's fur, he knew he had to find the right mixture to do it justice. His arm looked like it was sculpted from marble as he reached over and picked up the ceramic container he had collected it in. He brought it to his nose and closed his eyes as he took in the intricate scents deep inside. He'd had to harvest a few berries to get it just right. His eyes opened and a satisfactory expression washed over his face. "Hey, Ori." The king's face emerged from the dark, softly lit by a flickering light emanating from the open door and a fireplace just inside the home. The king observed the man as he sat outside on a stump, leaned over a small bench that held his painting supplies. "You usually meet me halfway. Did I finally sneak up on you this time?" said the king. "I smelled you a mile away," the man said. "When you get too close, the stench just gets distracting. It's awkward if I don't acknowledge you. You know, I am busy." Orion rolled his eyes and leaned up against the giant tree trunk that was the man's home. He looked inside. It really was remarkable how he had converted it. The fireplace was built in. It must have been handcrafted. Little painted wooden sculptures decorated the whole house. They were remarkably intricate, depicting creature after creature, large and small. They were on shelves above his bed and a few on the table. Some lined the covered windows. The windows were also well put together. They had shutters that, when closed, made the outside look indistinguishable from an average tree. Not to mention the door, which also appeared to have a similar camouflage effect when closed. Walking through the forest, there was a good chance you'd never know the tree was a house at all. "Firas, you truly are my shame," Orion said, smiling at his craftsmanship. "What's the mark?" he said, his eyes still fixed on the sleek wooden fox he was turning over in his hand. Orion squinted and turned to the back of Firas's head. "Why do I keep coming back to you?" "When you're good," he said, taking a larger brush and dipping it inside the wide ceramic vial. "And I'm the best." Orion sighed. He watched him as the brush came out with a shimmering blue and silver. Firas began slowly detailing the fox. "You know, I hate it when you don't look at me while I'm speaking," the king said. He kept painting. The bristles of the brush wrapped around the jagged ears of the sculpture. Without taking his eyes from the figurine, he reached his brush toward the container again. A loud pop rang out in the dark. Firas looked to see his vial blown into glowing charred bits on the ground. The paint was splattered everywhere. The bench, the ground, and on him. Firas gave a very exaggerated sigh. He briefly scrunched his nose as he picked a piece of the charcoaled vial off his partially painted wet fox. He set it on the bench and rotated himself on the stump. "At your service, my liege," he said, looking directly into his eyes. Orion rubbed his temple. 2 young men, late teens, early 20s. One is taller and black, with short black hair. Clean cut. Cairo is his name. The other is a light brown skin tone. Not where you're from, though. More like South American? Sure. He's also clean cut and black hair, but straight, not curly. He's called Julian. Firas rested his elbows on his knees and cracked his knuckles. Anything else? Running with anyone? Weapons? No weapons, no battle experience. They're fresh crossovers. I wouldn't be surprised if they still had on their clothes from the other side. Harper got to them, but I doubt they're staying with him. Firas smiled. Oh, Harper, huh? He took him right from under you. That guy is a legend. By my count, once I get these 2, I still have 2 more marks for you. But the offer's still good to get on official payroll for just him, right? Orion smirked. It definitely couldn't hurt the prospect. But an invisible man and his telepath protector might be a bit much, even for you. Firas's grin grew wider. I see you, Ori. Gunning for the ego. Keep it up. It's working. The king gave a knowing grin. Focus on the boys. You can fry bigger fish later. All right. Last scene? They crossed over in Taurine. He couldn't have taken them too far on foot at night. Plus, I think he drugged them. Consider it done. I'll call you at the nearest crossover. And alive, Orion said. Don't give me a repeat of the last one. It got done, didn't it? You know the rules. I see to it that it's done. I know. You'll live long if you stop micromanaging. Don't do it for me. Do it for you. Orion turned around and began to walk away from the warm glow of the tree trunk house. Firas saw him become a shadow that began fading into the dark before he stopped in his tracks. The king flipped back around. Why aren't you painting inside? It's peak hunting hours. Firas shrugged. There's nothing out here but us monsters. The king scoffed. Firas heard his footsteps resume travel deep into the woods. Orion prepared himself for the night and put on his evening clothes. It was far too late to do anything but sleep, and yet he found himself in his study trying to wind down with a book from his library. It was one on tactics that he found particularly boring, but occasionally had its useful tidbits. It was the perfect thing to combat his insomnia. A knock on the large wooden doors of his study wasn't common, especially because most of his servants were sleeping. They also knew that if he was in his study during the wee hours of the morning, he was trying to relax. But the knock came all the same. Come in, he said. The large, deep auburn doors swung open gently to reveal a light purple face. Your Highness, I'm so sorry to disturb. Caddock, please, you of all people know not to call me that. Caddock nodded. I know, but it's late, and you never disturb me for nothing. What is it? Well, thank you, he said. It's just, I caught her in the mural hall. She escaped her room. Orion's eyebrow went up. Can she walk through walls? No, it's... Caddock gave a heavy sigh before continuing. She said there was a rat in her room. He showed her the way out. Orion closed his book and laid it on his desk. He raised both his eyebrows now. Come again? It was a rat, sir. She said it told her where to go. Orion stared at him, his face frozen for a moment. Let me speak with her. Raina sat in her room on the bed with her hands folded like she was in trouble. The door opened to reveal Orion with a look on his face she couldn't quite read. He came around to the foot of the bed. He was followed quickly by Caddock, who came up behind him with a chair. The king sat down, not taking his eyes off the girl. Caddock quietly left the room, leaving the door open. Orion's countenance softened as he could see the unease on the girl's face. She shifted uncomfortably and kept her eyes averted. Orion spoke. You don't have to be afraid of me. I'm not angry. Raina looked down at her hands. Caddock told me something surprising. He paused and waited for her. Raina kept looking at her hands. Hey, he said quietly. He leaned forward. Raina looked up at him. "It's all right," he said softly. "Really, you don't have to worry. I just want to talk." Raina looked into his eyes. They seemed more kind than she had seen them before. She relaxed a bit. "So tell me about your new friend," he said. "You say he spoke to you?" Raina rubbed her hands on her thighs. She spoke slowly and quietly. "Sort of." "Explain sort of for me," he said. Raina frowned. "You believe me?" Orion looked vaguely surprised. "Why wouldn't I?" "Because no one ever believes me?" Orion's expression became blank. He said nothing. Raina had looked away and seemed to be thinking. "I don't usually explain it to people, except to Cairo and Dad. He believes me most of the time. He kind of has to. I don't think he wants to believe I can talk to animals. He doesn't really like me to tell people, or talk about it at all. But with animals, it's not like talking with words, but we just kind of know what we mean." Orion's face changed. Raina couldn't decide what his expression meant. It seemed like concern. "Can you describe that to me a bit more? What was it like?" he said as he leaned back, staying attentive. "I haven't really talked to that many rats before, but just like with most other animals, I just knew, you know? All animals think differently. He thinks more in smells and little squeaks, like he needed to smell to talk, or in sounds that are kind of hard to make." The king's brow lowered. "You've always been like this, even before you came to Dezu?" She nodded her head and looked down at her lap again for a moment. "That sounds dumb, huh? Everyone thinks I'm dumb when I talk like this." The king leaned forward in his chair a bit. "No, darling, that's not dumb at all." He stood up very abruptly and cleared his throat. "Thank you. We'll talk more later." As he turned to leave, Raina thought she saw that his eyes were watery. He took a step outside of the room and stopped with 2 fingers on the side of the door frame. Don't worry about the door being locked. We'll keep it open. I'm sorry about that. Just let any of my people know if you need anything." He looked at her for a moment. His knuckles grew white, pressed hard against the frame. He tapped them twice quickly against the wood and then disappeared around the corner, leaving Raina staring at the open door to the dark hallway. Raina sat suddenly cold on her bed. She couldn't imagine why what she had just said must have bothered him so much. She warmed her arms with her hands as the draft came in from the hall. She got up and walked to the doorway to peek outside. No one was in sight. She decided she wanted it closed anyway for now. She went back into her room, shutting the door behind her. Hey guys, it's Oliver. Thanks so much for listening. Give me a like and subscribe if you want to hear more. Support this book and my continued writing through Patreon. I'll have regular episodes up until all chapters of this story are fully released, so stay tuned.